恭敬大德三听，为四法为记一切众生，经转妙法轮教导我们如何了生死离苦得乐，速证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good-knowing advisors, welcome back. This is lecture number 117. Let me get the slides for today. Okay, does anyone, apart from Ron, who has already asked his question, have any questions or any requests or anything to share? Anything from last week that that I didn't explain properly? Anyone? No? Okay. If you do, you know what to do. You can type it into the chat box. So what I have in front of us is a verse from the Lotus Sutra that the Buddha says. He says his impartial teaching is like the rain of a single flavor. Living beings absorb it differently according to their natures. So right now, we are looking at developing loving kindness, and one of the ways to develop love, okay, the technique, okay, let me say it right. the technique or the practice of developing loving kindness is, first, you have to generate loving kindness for yourself. Because if you are not happy with yourself, you cannot be happy for others, or you cannot wish for others' happiness. So you start with yourself. You wish happiness for yourself. So one way to do that is to recollect all the good things that you have that are good about you. And because it's the Dharma, one of the good things we all share is that we have the Buddha as our teacher. But you can't just recollect the Buddha and, oh, the Buddha, but what does the Buddha mean? You know, what is it about the Buddha that as your teacher, and when you recollect that he's your teacher, or say someone like Shufu, makes you feel good about yourself, that you've made a really, really good decision to find a teacher, or to be able to choose a teacher like that. Okay, so that's what we've been exploring, and the Lotus Sutra is excellent because in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha reveals his true intention. All this while, before, if you were alive during the Buddha's time and you were by the Buddha side, all this while, mostly he talks about ending birth and death. He also teaches the Bodhisattva path and all that, but for people kind of like us, depending on your disposition, and we'll find out today through the lens of the Buddha's senior disciples, it's about ending birth and death, getting into emptiness, and then your work is done. You are no longer bound by samsara, by birth and death, and you are free from suffering once and for all. But the Buddha also teaches the Bodhisattva path. But you feel like it's not, that's not what you want, or that's not what you need. Those teachings are for other people. But say if you do want to be a bodhisattva, or you have greater aspirations than just to become an arhat, and then you wonder to yourself, it's like, oh, why hasn't the Buddha or Shufu, why haven't the true teachings been revealed to me? This verse in front of you explains it. It's because of ourselves. It's our own fault. In this verse, the Buddha uses the metaphor of the Dharma. He says the Dharma is like rain. The great Dharma cloud rains down on all beings, and beings are represented by plants. So it says those of very low faculties, like the moss, moss growing on the rock. Then there are small trees. From moss you go to grasses, then small trees, then big trees. And then it says the Buddha doesn't discriminate. The rain falls equally, and each takes what they can take. So if you are a little tree, a little shrub, there's only so much water you can take. Your capacity is just like that. But if you're a huge tree, if you've ever been to California, you've seen the redwoods. If you've seen the redwoods, they're very straight and very tall. They are not like normal trees. Redwood trees are like telephone poles. They are very straight, very tall, and they just shoot up hundreds of feet into the air. Those trees and other big trees have the ability to absorb more. They can understand more. Their capacity is more, so then they benefit more from the Dharma. All right. So it's not the Buddha withholding the Dharma back from you. No, the Buddha can't wait for all of us to become Buddhas. But the Buddha knows that, any of you have a green thumb and we have plants. You can't overwater a plant because you do more harm than good. You just have to give the amount of water that the plant can take. All right, something like that. Okay, let's continue from last week, where the Buddha is talking to Shariputra, It's more or less the same thing, but then the Buddha reveals something to Shariputra which Shariputra has forgotten. Okay, all right, everyone ready? All right. It says, Shariputra, you should know, those with dull faculties and slight wisdom, those attached to appearances and swelling with pride, cannot believe this Dharma. What Dharma? That the Buddha wants everyone to become Buddhas. Okay. The Buddha says, now I am joyful and fearless. In the midst of the Bodhisattvas, I shall be forthright and abandon skillful means, teaching only the unsurpassed path. So the Buddha says, now he's not afraid anymore. Okay, why? Because in the beginning of the assembly, when the Buddha was speaking, 5,000 bhikshus, bhikshunis, and lay people left. So everyone that remain are the huge trees that are ready to hear the real intention of the Buddha. So the Buddha is forthright, he'll be honest. Doesn't mean he was dishonest, but he's really honest right now. And it's no longer skillful means. He's no longer telling you what you need to know, but he's telling you what he wants you to know. Okay, so it says coming into the world, but once in a great while, Buddhas are difficult to encounter. When they do appear in the worlds, even rarer is their teaching of this Dharma. Throughout countless innumerable eons, it is also difficult to hear this Dharma. Those who can listen to this Dharma are even more difficult to come by. People hearing this Dharma, praising it joyfully with but a single word, thereby make offerings to the Buddhas of the 3 periods of time. Such people are rare indeed, even rarer than the Udumbara flower. None of you should have doubts, for me, being the Dharma King, announced to the entire assembly, with the path of the one vehicle, I teach and transform bodhisattvas. Shravaka disciples are not ready. Shravaka means the sound hearers, people like Shariputra. Okay, why is the Buddha saying that? Okay, it's going to become more clear. Buddha says, in the troubled world of the 5 tubidities, living beings are attached to various desires. Beings such as this will never aspire to Buddhahood. Okay, we just look at ourselves right now. Do we really aspire to Buddhahood? It's not a wish, okay? It is action. Or aspire to Buddhahood means you have to do something about it. It's not just, oh, I want to be a Buddha. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. Or I'm just happy with my life the way it is. I just want a better life. You know, most people, I just want a better life. I just want more money. I want less stress. I want my children to be good, to listen to me. And, you know, and maybe after I die, I go to heaven. That's what people want, most people. So it says, beings like this never aspire to Buddhahood. Buddhahood, yeah, you know, it's unthinkable. It's not something people think about, basically. So Buddha says the immoral of the future, hearing the Buddha, teach the one vehicle, in their delusion will not accept or believe it. Criticizing it, they will fall into the lower realms. There are those with shame and purity who aspire to Buddhahood. For them and all others such as them, I praise far and wide the path of the one vehicle. Okay, hold on. Okay, so Shariputra, you should know the Dharma of all Buddhas is thus. Through 10,000 kotis of skillful means, they teach Dharma in accord with what is appropriate. That means that's how long it takes to get someone ready to finally say, I bring forth my Bodhi resolve and I shall try my best to become a Buddha or to save living beings. To become a Buddha, you have to save living beings. Get through that door first. And the Buddha says, those who do not study or practice it will never come to understand it. Since all of you already know that the Buddhas, the teachers of the world, work through appropriate skillful means, you should no longer have doubts. Let your hearts be filled with joy, confident that you will reach Buddhahood. And now the Buddha says, at that time the Buddha said to Shariputra, now amid the great assembly of gods, humans, Shramanas, Brahmanas, and others, I tell you this. In the distant past, in the presence of 20,000 kotis of Buddhas, for the sake of the unsurpassed path, I constantly taught you. Okay, that is a very significant fact. Okay, Shariputra, Venerable Shariputra is an arhat under the Buddha. And then in the Jataka tales, you will have stories of how he and the Buddha has been together in countless lifetimes. And now the Buddha reveals to him, says, throughout 20,000 kotis of Buddhas. You know, Buddha only appears once every, I don't know how many billions of years. You can calculate between Shakyamuni Buddha and Maitreya Buddha. There's actually a way to calculate. Jin Yongshu has done it before. And this is not just one or two Buddhas, 20,000 kotis. So kotis is a huge number. So 20,000 of kotis. Shakyamuni Buddha has always been teaching Venerable Shariputra. Okay? That's a long time. And you can bet that the Buddha is also teaching you. Just that you don't know it. Because if you, how you say, that's the beauty of expedient means or skillful means. It is done in such a way that you don't know that you are being taught. Okay? And that's the only way it can work, because you have to do the work yourself. All right? It's like a very skillful parent. So or like the example, you're a teacher, you want your children to learn about animals. Learning it from a book is nothing compared to learning it at a zoo. So the good teacher takes you to the zoo, something like that. And so the children have fun. Who doesn't have fun at the zoo? And you don't have to spend time in a classroom. And you learn about animals. And those, with interest in animals will learn more than those with less interest. Okay, just give me a moment. I need to drink a bit of water. Okay, now the Buddha says, you received my teachings and followed me through the long night. The long night meaning darkness, without so until Shariputra became an arhat in this life, it was just a confused being. And I have guided you to be born into my Dharma using skillful means. Shariputra, in the past I taught you to set your resolve on Buddhahood, but you have completely forgotten this. Instead, you claim that you have already attained Nirvana, because Shariputra is a arhat, and arhats, it is said that arhats enjoy the same Nirvana or experience as the Buddha. Okay. Now Buddha says, now wishing to have you recall the practices you once vowed to undertake, for the sake of the Shravakas, I teach this great vehicle sutra entitled The Wonderful Dharma Lotus, the Dharma for the teaching of Bodhisattvas and protected and cherished by all Buddhas. That's the full title of the Lotus Sutra. And then now he gives Shariputra a present. He says, Shariputra, in a future age, after countless, limitless, inconceivable eons have passed, having made offerings to several tens of millions of kotis of Buddhas, having reverently upheld the proper Dharma, and having perfected the path practiced by the Bodhisattvas, you shall become a Buddha known as... Okay, I ran out of space, so I'm going to continue in the next slide. But just think about this, okay? Shariputra is an arhat. And there are certain things that happen when you're an arhat. You realize that time is... you react to time differently than, say, people like us. So that's why people like us, when we hear that, oh my God, Shariputra is an arhat, the Buddha is telling him in the future he will become a Buddha, but it's going to be a long time. It's going to take a long, long time. He said countless, limitless, inconceivable eons have passed. And then you have to go through so much hard work, make offerings to several tens of millions of kotis of Buddhas. It's not just tens of millions of Buddhas, tens of millions of kotis of Buddhas. So that's something normal people cannot accept or find it hard to accept, or it's just a mountain that you cannot climb, because our minds is just unable to is just beyond what we think we can handle. We're not ready yet. So that's why the Buddha had to wait until Shariputra became an arhat, and he was over suffering for the Buddha to be able to reveal this to him. Imagine if the Buddha had revealed this to him earlier, and and while Shariputra was still bound by the turbidity of time, and it could have a reverse effect. Okay, Buddha says, "You shall become a Buddha known as Tathagata flower radiance, one worthy of offerings, one of right and universal knowledge." And then the Buddha gave him, read out all his titles. All Buddhas have more or less the apart from their name, their specific name, their titles are more or less the same. And not only that, the Buddha said, your land, his pure land, will be called free from defilement. Its terrain will be flat and even, pure and beautifully adorned. It will be peaceful and tranquil, prosperous and joyful, abounding in gods and humans. The ground will be made of Vaidurya. There will be 8 intersecting roads, and then the ellipsis, meaning the Buddha goes on to describe Shariputra's pure land, which I'm not including. Anyone who's interested can go and read. So at this point, it is, how to put it, it is kind of like a child has spent many, many years studying, and they have joined the medical school because our example is that being a doctor is the best thing you can do, and you have guided maybe your son or your niece, someone you care for, along this way. Now they are a doctor, okay, and then you finally reveal to them, you say, okay, now that you're a doctor and you're going to work as a doctor and you're going to help save all these people in the future, you're going to be very well known, you're going to own a lot of clinics, or you're going to do so much good. You can finally reveal to that person because they're ready to undertake that responsibility. It won't scare them off anymore. They know what it takes. All right. So Shariputra is at that level. Okay. All right. Sorry for the blank screen. Okay. So now we're going to skip to the next chapter. All right. And this next chapter, Rebel Subhuti, Mahakatayana, Mahakashyapa, and Rebel Mahamaugalyana. All right. So they now, I'll just read. So having heard from the Buddha the unprecedented Dharma and the world-honored one's prediction that Venerable Shariputra would attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi means the Buddha state, the ultimate level of awakening. Okay? Brought forth a rare resolve and were overjoyed. Okay, you're talking about arhats. Okay, they rose from their seats, straightened their robes, bared their right shoulders, bent their right knees to the ground, single-mindedly put their palms together, bowed respectfully, gazed at the world-honored one's countenance, and said to the Buddha. Okay, where do you see this? You will see this when people in the Buddha hall request the Dharma. Okay, so what happens is when you request the Dharma, although we do it virtually, when you request the Dharma, you light incense, you hold it to your forehead, you circumambulate the Buddha 3 times, and then after you put the incense in the censer, that's what you do. Okay, so they bare their right shoulders. That's why when we wear the sash, we don't cover the right shoulder, we just cover the left. Then you bend your right knee to the ground. Some people, when they do that, they're not stable, they start shaking. And then you put your palms together, you look up, and then you ask a question or you request the Dharma. So that's what they did. So what did they say? They say, we being at the head of the Sangha, because these are the Buddha's great disciples, and advanced in years, considered ourselves to have attained Nirvana and to have had nothing left to accomplish, which is true based on the Dharma that the Buddha has taught them. That's true. It says, hence, we did not further our pursuit of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Long, long ago, the world-honored one began teaching the Dharma. We have been present throughout that period of time. So I think by now they have been with the Buddha for, I don't recall when the Lotus Sutra was spoken, but maybe say a good 20, 30 years. Sitting with very bodies, we contemplated only emptiness, marklessness, and non-action. That's the state of emptiness that they have achieved. It says, our minds did not take delight in the teachings for bodhisattvas, their playful spiritual powers, their purifying of the Buddha lands, or their perfecting of living beings. So they know of the bodhisattva path. Okay, and what's more interesting is they themselves actually teach other beings how to walk the bodhisattva path. We'll come to that later. So it's very ironic. Okay, the Buddha's disciples not only know of the bodhisattva path, and not um, but they also teach the bodhisattva path. But they themselves do not see themselves walking the path. All right. How do you, despite the Buddha praising the bodhisattva path? Okay. So how do we understand this? We'll come to a section later, which I will explain how to make sense of this. And it says, what is the reason? The world-honored one led us to leave behind the three realms and to attain the realization of nirvana. That means they have ended birth and death. We did not feel the slightest desire for the Buddha's teaching that inspires the bodhisattvas toward Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. You know, when you're in emptiness, one of the things that how you say, that you have no more attachment to the world, neither to your body. So when, for us, we discriminate. Okay, we see certain things having different values. Some things may be not valuable in terms of money, but because it's your father's watch or your mother's brooch or ring that was left for you, there's some emotional value to it. Some things are how you say, important to you for other reasons. Some things you just don't care about, so we discriminate. But when your mad mind stops, when you have reached the ground of emptiness like the arhats have, everything in the world feels the value to you is like if you go to your garden and then you just dig up some mud from your garden, everything feels like that. So if someone steals something from you, it is as if someone is stealing mud. It doesn't affect you at all. You don't even think about it. You're like, okay, you want it, you can have it. You genuinely don't care. But you feel that way for everything. Okay, you no longer have that kind of clinging desire or passion that we have, that normal people have. Okay, so it says, but now, in the presence of the Buddha, hearing his prediction of a Shravaka's attainment of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, we experience great joy as never before. Now we are unexpectedly able to hear this rare Dharma. Deeply gratified to have been favored, we rejoice at receiving this outstanding benefit. It is as if countless precious treasures have come into our possession without our seeking them. Okay, you don't ask for it, but you get it. It says, what is the reason? The world-honored one led us to leave behind. Let me see. Sorry, this is a repeat slide. Let me move on. It says, it is as if a young boy, immature and ignorant, left his father for a distant land, wandering from country to country for over 50 years. The Buddha, in the same way, knew our preference for the lesser. Never did he say to us, you shall become Buddhas. Rather, he said that we should cease all outflows, achieve the lesser vehicle, and become Shravaka disciples. Okay, so this is the part where I will pause the slideshow. The first sentence says, young boy. This is, how you say, the parable of the father and the lost child that is introduced by, who spoke this? Was it, let me see, who is the one speaking now? Is it Venerable Mahamogliana? Venerable, all of them. Okay, all four of them. All right, okay. So they use this parable to explain uh, how they felt. So what is the parable? It's a very famous parable from the Lotus Sutra. It's about a young man who has a father who's very, very rich. But something happened to the young man. I don't remember the exact circumstances. I have to, I thought I knew the story, but unfortunately, probably not. So anyway, he left home. Okay, maybe to seek fortune, you have to go and read the sutra to find out. So he left home, and after a while, he had bad luck. And I think he also had some kind of what do you call um, um, he basically he had, after he left home, he had a very, very hard experience, and probably he encountered okay, let me see, sorry, I should have uh, read it properly. Okay, let me see. Okay, it says, it's as if a young boy, immature and ignorant, left his father for a distant land, wandering from country to country for over 50 years. Okay, so 50 years, this young man became lost. His father worried, looking everywhere for him, until tired of the search, stopped in a certain city where he built himself a great estate and amused himself with the 5 desires. Then let me see. And this father became very well respected by all the kings in the different countries. They admire him. Why? Because he was very fair. He was very generous. All the businessmen all liked him. They really respected him. They honored him, and so he just became really famous. Everyone knew about him, but he always missed his son. He was always looking for the son. So this poor son, for 50 years, begging his way from city to city, just enough to get by, and having a really, really hard and tough life. One day, and apparently his body was also full of sick. He's very sick as well. So one day he came to this town where his father was. And when the father saw him, the father recognized him straight away. But the father also knew that the son had lost his mind, that there's something wrong with the son. So the sutra says, when the poor son saw his father so noble and dignified, he thought the man he was seeing, he didn't know it was his father. He said, he thought his father was a king or equal to a king. And then in fright, he rebuked himself. He said, why have I come here? Further, he thought, if I stay too long, I may be oppressed and forced to work. Some people, when they go to the temple, that's how they feel, right? So anyway, says, having had this thought, he ran off in haste, and he inquired about poor villages where he sought work. Because he had a very low opinion of himself, so he went to all the poor places where he felt more comfortable and thought maybe he can find some work there. So the father, who recognized his son, had a plan. He knew, he knew he had to nurse the son back to proper health first. But he also knew that the son was not ready to know the truth. So he had his workers dress up as poor people to go and bring the son back to his estate. But when they tried to do that, the son was very scared. And the son thought they were kidnapping him or something. And then he fainted, he fell to the ground. They thought that they would put him to slavery or something. So when they brought him back as he fainted, then the father sent his servants to go and, I should have read this story properly first. I'm so sorry. So basically, the father sent his servants, and the son, seeing these servants dressed so well, and because the father was so great, even the servants wore nice clothes. that really scared the son. Then the father had to ask the servants to dress up in ratty clothes and to bring the son, offer the son the job and bring the son back to the estate. Then the father himself also had to disguise himself in to be very unimpressive in appearance when the father went to talk to the son. So what did they do? They gave the son the job. They said, "Do you want a job?" And it says, "Okay, we'll hire you, and I think the suitable job for you would be to clean the stables." So what do you do when you clean the stables? You're actually cleaning away all the dung, and it's how you say, it's probably one of the most basic jobs, most entry level jobs, the one of the worst jobs you can get in on an estate. And they say, "You can't work for us. We'll give you this job because he feels comfortable doing work like this, but we'll pay you more. We'll pay you twice the normal rate." So when the son heard this, he could accept this kind of responsibility. So he happily followed them back, and he started cleaning the stables. Then he started cleaning the houses and the dwellings, and he felt really good, the son. And that made the father really sad, because the father, how you say, seeing the son, thinking that that is the job that's suitable for him, make the father really sad. So one of the instances when the father put on the disguise was putting on the ratty clothes, and then he also went to get a dung shovel, and he went to work alongside his son, so to make the son feel comfortable with him. So that reminds me, like, Earthstor Bodhisattva, he goes to the hells where people who the living beings, the hell beings, really need him, something like that. Then approaching his son, he said, "Work with diligence and I will increase your wages." And then slowly the father gave him more things to get him used to a better life. He gave him oil to rub his feet, gave him more food, gave him a proper bed, to sleep. And all this while, he always encouraged his son to work hard. He said, "Work hard, work hard, work hard." And he always he always told the son, "Oh, you're like my son," to make the son feel comfortable and feel wanted, cared for, and not judged. So slowly, the father increased the responsibilities of the son. As the son became more confident in himself and he was able to do one job very well, the father gave him more and more responsibilities, until one day the son was in charge of the house. Then for 20 years, the son was taking care of all the affairs in the house. And then the father would show him where all his gold, silver, all the treasures was kept, how the father conducted his business. So at this time, all this while, the son doesn't know that the man is his father. The son just thinks that, "Oh, this is a very rich man who has, and I work hard, and he's taken a liking to me, and he recognizes that my potential, and that's why he's giving me all this." So that's why when Shariputra and the Buddha's other disciples said they never thought about about becoming a Buddha. They said never had crossed their minds to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. It's just like the son who thinks that, okay, this man, is treating me well, but it will never cross his mind that one day all this will be his, or that he's actually the son. He just thinks that, oh, I'm having a really good life, like if you're a top executive in a company, the company is not yours. You're just hired to do a job, right? So normal people will never think, oh, one day this company is going to be mine. All the shares are going to come to me. No, the shares are owned by someone else. You are just paid to do a job. So I hope you all understand why the Buddha's senior disciples didn't think about going for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Okay, because they had already obtained the level of CEO. Okay, as a professional manager, you can't go higher than a CEO. They were all CEOs of the Buddha's companies. And they thought, okay, that's it. I've achieved the goal. I can retire now. All right. So slowly, as the son's mind broadened, slowly meaning like 20 years, slowly, one day the father knew that the time was right. And then in front of an assembly of the kings, the ministers, all the noble people of the land, the father announced to everyone that this man is actually my son. He left me 50 years, he was gone. And now it's been 20 years, he's been working for me. And now I'm ready to announce that he's actually my son. Everything I own is now his. He's ready to inherit his inheritance. So that's the parable of the lost son. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this parable was actually spoken by the Buddha's disciples because that's how they felt. They felt like, all this while we thought we were just not theirs to have. They thought that they had achieved what the Buddha had taught them, and that was it. So they say, coming back to the slide, they say, the Buddha had instructed us to proclaim the supreme path. Whoever practices, Sri Ling says, parable of the prodigal son. Yes. In the Bible, I'm not sure if it's in the Bible or maybe there's also the how do you pronounce it? Prodigal son as well. They also have something like that, but it's slightly different because that, if I'm not mistaken, in the Bible, the son admitted his mistake or something. Okay, anyway, I knew it, but I'm not prepared to talk about it. I just thought it was interesting that the Bible also has the same one, similar but different. Okay, so anyway, it says the Buddha had instructed us to proclaim the supreme path. Whoever practices this path shall attain Buddhahood. Indebted to the Buddha's teaching for the sake of the great bodhisattvas employing various causes and conditions throughout many parables, words, and numerous expressions, we expounded the unsurpassed path. So yes, they were teaching the bodhisattva path. It says all the Buddha's disciples who heard this Dharma from us pondered over it day and night and diligently practiced it. Thereupon, all the Buddhas gave them predictions. So all this while, okay, they are, it's like you are working for a very rich family, like this prodigal son, and you're managing all the treasures on behalf of the family, never realizing that you were part of the family yourself. Okay, something like that. So it says all the Buddha's dharmas, the esoteric treasury, is set forth only for bodhisattvas. The essential truth has not been revealed for our sakes. We were like the poor son who drew near to his father, although he knew of all his possessions, he had no desire for them. In just the same way, although we expounded the precious treasury of the Buddha Dharma, we did not aspire to it. Maybe they didn't think they were worthy, or the Buddha never expected them to follow. As we considered attaining inner stillness to be sufficient. Why? Because it's very, very comfortable. When you have entered emptiness, it is a level of comfort, of joy is not the right word, or happiness is not the right word, but it will be used because it's a kind of feeling at ease, feeling comfortable, feeling happy that nothing in this world can ever create for you. It's a very refined form of feeling really, really, really good. Yeah. So anyway, that's why they thought that was sufficient. Having completed that, we saw nothing else to achieve. And even when we had heard of purifying Buddha lands and teaching living beings, we took no delight in these matters. What is the reason? All phenomena are empty and still, neither arising nor ceasing, neither great nor small, without outflows and unconditioned. Having perceived them as such, we took no delight to them. So one of the things about arhats is that they get attached to emptiness. So what they just described is their state, and that's how they see the world. Or basically, from their point of view, there's no world for them. So they get attached to emptiness and they abide in emptiness. And the difference between them and a bodhisattva is that a bodhisattva does not get attached to emptiness, so they can leave emptiness. They have access to emptiness, or rather they are operating within emptiness, but they do not dwell in emptiness. So that's why they come back and save living beings. Okay, all right. So throughout the long night, we had no craving for or attachment to the Buddha's wisdom, nor did we aspire to it. We believed that the Dharma we had attained was the ultimate Dharma, that by practicing the Dharma of emptiness throughout the long night, we had managed to escape from the suffering and distress of the three realms, that we were in our final incarnation and would settle ourselves in conditioned nirvana. Now he says the nirvana is conditioned. Normally when people describe nirvana, you don't see the word condition next to nirvana, but now he uses the word conditioned nirvana. That what the Buddha taught had resulted, in our attainment of the path without falsehood. We assume that we had thereby repaid the Buddha's kindness. Okay, so it's interesting that the way they describe the attainment of their arhatship as repaying the Buddha's kindness. Okay. Why I'm bringing that up? Because gratitude. Gratitude is a very big motivating factor in Mahayana Buddhism. If you don't have gratitude, you will never ever be able to bring forth the resolve for Bodhi or the resolve for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Okay. And it says, although we, for the sake of the Buddha's disciples, taught the Dharma of Bodhisattvas by which they should seek Buddhahood, we ourselves never aspired to or took delight in this Dharma. They repeated that. And seeing this, our guiding master, meaning the Buddha, let things be. The Buddha didn't force them. Because he saw into our minds, at first he did not spur us on by telling us the real benefit. Like the wealthy elder who, knowing his son's lowly aspirations, used the power of skillful means to soothe and calm his mind and afterward entrusted him with all of his wealth, the Buddha in a similar manner contrives rare occurrences. Okay. And understanding the minds of those prone to the lesser, he uses the power of skillful means to calm and attune their minds, only then teaching them the greater wisdom. On this day, we have attained what we never had. That for which we originally had no desire has come to us uninvited. Just as the poor son gained countless treasures, now, world-honored one, we have attained the path and its fruits. Within the teaching of freedom from outflows, we have attained the pure eye. So it says, throughout the long night, we observed the Buddha's pure precepts, but only now have we gained the reward. So now they realize that, the reward is an arhatship, but there's more to it. It says, now we have attained the state free of outflows, the unsurpassed great fruition. Now we are all truly Shravakas, who have been led to awakening upon hearing the voice of the Buddha. Now that we are all truly arhats, it is fitting for us to receive offerings from gods, people, demons, and Brahmas dwelling in various worlds. So you realize in this passage, it is very, very different from other sutras where they describe themselves as truly Shravakas and truly Arhats. Because in this sutra, in the beginning, the Buddha says that only true Arhats will aspire to Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Those who don't are not Arhats yet. They think they're Arhats, but they're not true Arhats. So now for the Buddha's disciple to realize that they too have a share of the Buddha's wisdom, meaning they will become Buddhas in the future, it's, how you say, that they have the potential to, they call themselves truly Arhats. It says it is fitting, only now fitting for us to receive offerings from gods. So it says the World Honored One in his great kindness uses this rare occurrence to compassionately teach and benefit us all. Throughout incalculable kotis of eons, who could ever repay his kindness? So now it talks about gratitude. And it says, giving one's hands and feet, bowing one's head to the ground in obeisance, whatever offerings one makes could never repay his kindness. If one were to bear him on one's head and carry him upon one's shoulders for eons as numerous as the Ganges sands, revering him wholeheartedly or honoring him with delicacies, limitless valuable clothing, etc., and all these good things, or to build stupas and temples with precious treasuries, offering clothes, and says, one would still never repay his kindness. It says the Buddhas are rare indeed. Immeasurable, limitless, and inconceivable is the strength of their great spiritual powers. Without outflows, without effort, they are kings of all dharmas. For the sake of lowly beings, they patiently carry out their work. For common folk who grasp at appearances, they teach according to what is appropriate. The Buddhas have attained supreme mastery of the dharmas. They understand all living beings' desires, delights, and willpower. Using innumerable analogies specific to individual ability, they teach the dharma. That means they teach you according to where you are. All right? In accord with living beings' wholesome roots from former lives, they identify those who have matured and those who have not yet matured. Through a variety of measures, they discern their situations. For the sake of the path of the one vehicle, the Buddhas teach three vehicles in accord with conditions. So this is coming from Arhats, from the Buddha's senior disciples. And for them, it is, for us, we are just reading it from the sutra. But for them, it's a realization. It's something that they have woken to, that for a long, long time, the Buddha has been by their side teaching, teaching and encouraging them whenever the Buddha can, without being impatient, without scolding them, without forcing what the Buddha wants onto them, but only using various skillful ways to make them ready for the next step, make them ready for the next step, make them ready for the next step. Until now, when it is time, when they weren't even expecting it, the Buddha reveals to them, all of you will, that's in the remainder part of the sutra, the Buddha reveals to them, just like how the Buddha revealed to Venerable Shariputra, that in the future you're going to become Buddhas. So when they realize this, it's very, very hard to not feel moved, not feel gratitude for the Buddha. And for all of you, you don't have to wait until you become Arhats, thinking like, damn, okay, you got Arhat, is your last lifetime. After this, you're going to enjoy Nirvana for the rest of your existence or non-existence. You don't have to wait for that until then to realize the kindness of the Buddha. Because where you are now, although you don't know, is because of the Buddha. You just don't know. But one day it will be revealed to you. Okay? All right. So let me see. There's a question from Ron. Does reading certain sutra create more merit than reading other sutras? Okay, so using that rain thing, the Buddha says the Dharma is like the rain. It rains down equally on everyone, and you absorb, living beings absorb the rain according to their own potentials. So you have to ask yourself, because sutras are different, they were spoken to different people based on their conditions. So that's why you have sutras where the Buddha would teach a young man who has lost his parents how to be a responsible husband, how to be a responsible employer, to be a responsible employee, how to take care of your children, how to take care of your wealth and generate wealth. He didn't teach this young man how to end birth and death. No. And so he would taught the young man, he's like an uncle teaching a nephew without his parents anymore on how to grow up, basically, and how to lead a responsible life and how to choose good friends. That's all in that sutra. Then you also have the Buddha teaching a couple who's so in love. No, they said the moment when we were young, when we saw each other, we immediately fell in love at first sight. And all we want is to be reborn again and again with each other. The Buddha didn't say, oh, love leads to suffering, is the cause of attachment and desire and suffering. And then the Buddha didn't teach them that at all. The Buddha says, okay, well, if you want to remain as a couple in life after life, these are the things that you must do. You must share the same virtues. You must be good to each other. Follow the precepts. That's how the Buddha taught them. Nothing about ending birth and death or that emotional love is bad. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is the Buddha teaching bodhisattvas how to become Buddhas, how to save living beings. So whether one sutra has more merit or the other is not a function of the sutra, but rather what you make of the sutra. So it could be a very simple short sutra, but if practiced well, it could bring more merit than someone reading the Avatamsaka Sutra and not practicing at all, or not understanding the sutra at all. Okay, so while there are differences within the sutras, okay, Shofu calls the I think it was the Avatamsaka Sutra like the king of the sutras, or was it the Lotus Sutra? I get confused. They're all good, really good sutras. Supreme. To me, they're all like equal. Of course, there are differences within the sutras, but the sutra that makes you practice well, okay, the sutra that helps you become a better person, that's the sutra that has more merit. Okay, I hope that kind of answers your question. Okay, then anyone have any more questions? Any other questions? Anything you want to bring up? Okay, there is a question brought up a few weeks ago, which I have not addressed. This question is about the practice of mantras. How, for example, in the Shurangama Sutra, it says that if you want to recite the Shurangama mantra, that you should not consume the 5 pungent plants. And there are other religions as well, which also have mantras. And sometimes they can be very strict about when you practice a mantra, you have to keep yourself pure, like you can't eat meat, or there are certain things that you can't do. So the question was, can you, if there are people who don't, how you say, they don't have a pure vegetarian diet, can they be taught to recite mantras? Okay, well, the Buddhist mantras, okay, if you look at a lot of the Buddhist mantras, some of it have meanings that are quite straightforward, like Om Mani Padme Hum is about the jewel lotus, something to do with jewel lotus. And then some sutras like the Great Compassion Mantra or the Shurangama Mantra contains the names of a lot of the demon kings, um, spirit kings. They're all Dharma protectors. So, which is why when you invoke their name, it is said that if you want the mantra to be efficacious, meaning you want to get a response, and the response is not from your kung fu, okay? Don't make the mistake of inflating your ego and thinking, oh, you recite the mantra so well, you get a response. It is not you, but it is your sincerity that evokes them to give you a response, okay? But if you consume the 5 pungent plants, you will smell bad. And I don't think it's that you smell bad, they don't really want to come to you. As Dharma protectors, I think they will, but it's just out of respect. You don't want to, I may be wrong, okay? Okay, so this is what Shufu says. Shufu says that if you eat the 5 pungent plants at night when you sleep, there are spirits that come and they like the smell around your mouth. So it's kind of like they come and kiss your mouth. And that renders the mantra ineffective. I know that's what Shufu says. I don't know how to explain that. Okay. And then it's also because Dharma protectors, humans in the first place, we smell really bad. Like if you go to a farm, okay, animals smell bad, right? Same thing. Humans actually smell very bad to the spirits and to the gods in the heavenly realms. They don't like to come and spend time with us humans because we just smell bad. Smelling bad has 2 kinds. One kind is physical, the body, like we are just not clean. The second kind of smelling bad is that we are not pure we don't have virtue. Yeah. But if you have really good virtue, like some of the eminent monks, then even the gods like to spend time with them because they say their fragrance goes against the wind. It's a different kind of fragrance. The wind blow in one direction, but the fragrance of the precepts, the fragrance of the virtue uh, can go against the wind. So the gods like that. Yeah. So at least for the Buddhist mantras, you don't have to fear, say if you take the 5 pungent plants or you want other people to recite the mantra, you don't have to fear that something will go wrong. I don't think that will happen because these are Dharma protecting spirits. I don't know about other mantras from other outside of Buddhism. Okay, that I wouldn't, mess around with. But for Buddhist mantras, because how you say, because these are also expedient means. So sometimes people, when they first practice, they're not ready yet to change their diet. So, but eventually they will. And when they do, they already are familiar with the practice of the mantras, right? Okay, so I wouldn't, how you say, hold back or discourage other people or not teach it to other people if they're not ready to change their dietary habits. Is that clear? Does anyone have any questions? Yes, no? Okay. So for next week, I think we have we are more or less, unless someone wants more about mindfulness of the Buddha, we will go to mindfulness of the Dharma. If anyone has, let me know. I'll bring it up in the WhatsApp chat. I think we have done enough to show how difficult it is for the Buddha to bring us to the point of one day bringing forth the Bodhi resolve, which we haven't done yet. Okay, so the Buddha has a lot of work to do. Yeah. So as we be mindful of the Buddha, and this is part of Pure Land practice as well. When you recite the Buddha's name, Amitabha Buddha, Shufu says Amitabha Buddha has the most affinity with us, and then second is Medicine Master Buddha. These two. Shakyamuni Buddha, I think maybe number 3. So number 1 is Amitabha Buddha, especially for us Mahayana Buddhists. Then number 2 is Medicine Master Buddha. Then number 3, although Shakyamuni Buddha is our historical Buddha and he gave us all these sutras, I think he's number 3. Yeah. Okay. So when we do Pure Land practice, part of the recollection or mindfulness of the Buddha is this, understanding what the Buddha means to us. That's, if not, you know, of course there are a lot of other things we have to be mindful, we can be mindful of the Buddha of. But as a, when it comes to loving kindness, to evoke that, because loving kindness is a emotional thing. Okay, it's not a logical thing. It comes from the heart. So that's why we, in these last few weeks, we have been relating to the Buddha from that aspect. Okay, from an aspect of gratitude. Okay. All right. So let's, if no questions, let's what's up? Dedicate merit. Excuse me. Okay. Put my palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, so the Bible version of the Bible prodigal son in the Bible is slightly different, but it's a big difference compared to the one in the Lotus Sutra. If anyone can tell next week, can share what's the difference, then you get extra points. Okay, extra merit. Okay, so see you all next week. Amitabha.